There is a man who worked for NASA as a spacecraft operator at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. He was involved in over 650 missions, including the Mercury and Apollo expeditions and the Space Shuttle period. His name is Clark McClelland, and it was during this time on the Space Shuttle mission that he witnessed something very strange. According to McClelland, he was monitoring the mission from his desk at the Kennedy Launch Control Center when he saw something. Here's his statement. I, Clark C. McClelland, former spacecraft operator, Space Shuttle Fleet, personally observed an 8 to 9 foot tall ET on 27-inch video monitors while on duty in the Space Kennedy Center, Launch Control Center. The ET was standing upright in the Space Shuttle payload bay, having a discussion with two tethered US NASA astronauts. I also observed on my monitors the spacecraft of the ET, as it was in a stabilized, safe orbit to the rear of the Space Shuttle main engine pods. I observed this incident for about 1 minute and 7 seconds. Plenty of time to memorize all that I was observing. It was an ET and alien starship. Could he have been mistaken, seeing something different, and his mind filled in the gaps? He points out that in many years he was working on these things, he had strong visual recognition of crafts created and flown by the human race, whether secret or otherwise. He claims that he was not the only witness and that colleagues secretly confided that they too had witnessed the alien. Surely the man is making it all up and never worked at NASA. The fact is, he did. There is photographic evidence, and NASA have never denied his employment. He has also pointed a finger strongly at NASA for being a military establishment. Here's what he said. The Pentagon owns NASA. Some of the Department of Defense missions I participated in were top secret. Those missions carried TS satellites and other space mission hardware into orbit, where several crews met with ETs. He claims that the US government has been keeping a secret a long-standing military alliance with aliens for decades, in league with the Human Exchange Program. A close friend of McClelland is the astronaut Edgar Mitchell. He has openly stated his belief in aliens visiting Earth. Mitchell stated that he was 90% sure that many of the thousands of UFOs recorded since the 1940s belongs to visitors from other planets.
Like that, 15 miles in a fraction of a second. I disengaged the autopilot to push the nose over because we were at a collision course. And when I did, I just saw it head on. It's 300 feet in diameter. We knew that. We had a knowing, like somebody was telling us, 300 feet in diameter. So at that time, I heard a hell of a noise. And I said to him, what the hell was that? He said, well, the navigator and the radio man ducking fell, hit their head, one hit their head, hurt their arm, they were scrambling on the deck. So I thought it hit us underneath. So I said, well, where in the hell did it go? And Fred said, right over to the right. I can see it. I couldn't see it. So it drifted forward about 5 miles from it. It never got to the altitude that we were at, a few hundred feet below. I began to watch it. Well, we knew then it was a friendly encounter. They just wanted us to see him. So then I went to engage the autopilot again. The magnetic compass was going like this. And the bird dogs, which is direction finders, the two bird dogs, they were pointing right at this thing, just vibrating like this. And there was a lot of electrical things in the airplane that went haywire. So I told Fred, did you see that going? He says, anyway, it was close, it was doing this. And so I went back to the vacuum operator. That's the old airplane, the vacuum operator, hydraulic operator control. So I go back to that. So then we sat there and watched it for a while, because it just paced us, stayed with us. And so the other crew wanted to land at large engines, so I had sent back. They came forward. Al Jones, which was the original plane commander, took my seat, and was still there. He was watching. And as I was walking back aft, he decided he was going to chase it. And so he disengaged off. When I get back aft, I wanted to see how the passengers were doing. They're all on the right-hand side. They could see it underneath the wing. And then, I recognized the doctor back. He was a psychiatrist out of Bethesda Naval Hospital, plus a lot of other things. So I said, I better talk to him first. So Cornell said, did you see what we saw, Doc? He grinned at me and looked me straight down. Yeah, and he says, yeah, that was a flying saucer. I didn't look at it. I don't believe in such things.
I've seen a strange object I've never seen in my life over the Pascagoula River. It was just sitting up there like it was in a still spot. It wasn't moving, but it had the weirdest lights around it. It was round, kind of egg-shaped, blue and white, silver lights around it, and it had a silver glow around it. The middle of the craft looking thing was, to me, looked like it was clear plastic. It had a piece of plastic somewhere. Like clear plastic, like you could see through it, even though it was nighttime. Mm-hmm. But I seen that, and I kept saying to myself, Jesus Christ, what is that? So, I witnessed probably 5 or 10 minutes while the mechanic was setting his tools up, and it had his lights and things, floodlights, because you're going to be under the crane, around the crane, and really up in the crane. I was just as stooly. You know, you just don't see something like that every day, but I said, you know, can't be a helicopter, can't be a jet or nothing. It's got to be a UFO, but I've never seen nothing like that. It was.
Describe exactly what it looked like.
Have you ever seen a welder at nighttime welding art at night? They're welding steel at night from a distance. It puts out like blue, white rays, you know, silver rays. Mm-hmm. And that was a little bit like that because it had a lot of rays glowing around it. Mm-hmm. But never seen nothing like that in the sky before. And it wasn't even moving, it was just sitting up there.
From your vantage point, could you see Charlie and Calvin over there, under it or around it?
No. Calvin and Charlie was the other side. That would be the west bank, well, the east bank. And they would be like diagonally across. There was a bridge there, and they had to go over the bridge to get to where they were going fishing. They wasn't that far away, but they were diagonally across, like, I don't know. Well, I witnessed the UFO that picked them up, you know. But I told the crane operator what I'd seen. He just kind of laughed it off. So, no, yeah, right. Back in them days, 1973, most of us locals, man, we didn't believe in UFOs, a Loch Ness monster, or a Bigfoot, nothing like that. So he laughed it off, and the next day I worked my day job at the shipyard. It had already got out on the news somehow or another, or the local people spreading it around. And I told them I'd seen something, and yeah, right. He put on their leg. Come on, Louis. So I said, well, maybe I'll just stay out of it. You know, a lot of people thinking he was hallucinating because maybe he'd hit the bottle a little bit too much or something. And but no, I actually thought of that, but I just kept my mouth shut, stayed out of it. And I told my family, my friends, my deer hunter buddies and all that.
Yeah.
And,
So it wasn't a secret that you kept to yourself. People you knew you had seen
yeah,
it.
my whole
It just
family,
wasn't in
friends.
the newspapers.
But I know Charlie. Charlie on the job was a good hard worker. But I don't think he would tell a lie like that. I think it really happened, what I know.
Well, while I was attending Northrop Aeronautical Institute and working for Douglas Aircraft in El Segundo, California, I had heard about George Adamski, and one of the Sunday newspapers, he had his story and his pictures of contacts, plus pictures of his ships. Well, I had, by that time, seen so many during the day and the night that I felt I'd like to go up and meet this gentleman. On the weekend, he would entertain people who would come to see him, military people, engineers, scientists, people from all walks of life. He had taken some beautiful pictures of the scout craft as well as the carrier ships. I went up to see him. He had a 6-inch telescope that he used to take the pictures of the flying saucers. And in using that scope, when I finished, I was just about to take my eye off the eyepiece when there was a blue-white streak that went by, and I jerked my head up to see if I could see it, and I didn't. And I looked at his 15-inch telescope dome, which was a couple of 100 yards from his house. And there was a big flare-up blue-white light, and then it kind of closed back down. No noise. First I thought it was an explosion, but it was a little slower than that. And there was an elliptical flying saucer. It looked to me like it was hovering above the ground. So I heard it increase its frequency, and it got brighter and brighter, and it was really pretty hard to look at. And it shot straight up until it looked like one of the stars. If you've ever been to Mount Palomar at night on a dark night, boy, they're big and bright. And it stopped for an instant, and then it shot over the horizon over San Diego.
The modern history of Area 51 as a place for UFOs and extraterrestrial activity began in the 1980s. Bob Lazar claimed in 1989 that he had worked at Area 51's Sector 4, said to be located underground inside the Papoose Range near Papoose Lake. He claimed that he was contracted to work with alien spacecraft that the government had in its possession. Similarly, in 1996, a documentary, Dreamland, directed by Bruce Burgess, included an interview with a 71-year-old mechanical engineer who claimed to be a former employee of Area 51 during the 50s. His claims include that he had worked on a flying disc simulator, which had been based on a disc originating from a crashed extraterrestrial craft and was used to train pilots. He also claimed to have worked with an extraterrestrial being named J-Rod and described as a telepathic translator. In August 1962, for example, there was an incident that made even the Boas case look tame. Unfortunately, on this occasion, the victim did not survive to tell the tale. Briefly, the facts are these. On the 19th of that month, 2 glowing red spheres the size of footballs are reported to have flown over the hut of a poor diamond prospector named Revelino Marfa de Salva. Later, 2 aliens, approximately 1.5 feet in height, entered the hut and peered at the family as they lay in bed. The next day, one of the man's sons was surprised to discover 2 strange balls outside the hut. One was entirely black, and the other black and white. When the father came out to look at them, they apparently rose up at him and enveloped him in a cloud of yellow smoke. He was never seen again. Shortly afterwards, The son was reported to have been taken into custody by the Brazilian army, some say as a means of silencing him. During the Second World War, they were called Foo Fighters, and in 1946, as they flew over Scandinavia, they were known as Ghost Rockets. It wasn't until Boise, Idaho businessman Kenneth Arnold saw them near Mount Rainier, Washington, that they became flying saucers. Although the official investigation wouldn't be launched for another 6 months, the Arnold sighting was the first one to receive major coverage in the United States. Army Air Force's investigations, working out of the 4th Air Force headquarters, became deeply involved in the Arnold sighting. Arnold made his sighting of the strange objects flying one behind the other at about 9,500 feet at a speed he estimated to be more than 1,500 miles an hour. This was something that clearly wasn't made in secret projects hidden in the mountains of New Mexico, and it wasn't something that was made by the Soviet Union as they began to press for world domination. This was something strange that had no ready explanation other than it was strange and almost impossible to believe. When Arnold landed later in the afternoon on June 24th in Yakima, Washington, he told the assembled reporters what he had seen. In the course of describing the objects, he said they moved with a motion like that of saucers skipping across the water. The shape, however, according to drawings that Arnold completed for the Army, showed objects that were heel-shaped with a blunt nose. In later drawings, Arnold elaborated, showing objects that were crescent-shaped with a scalloped trailing edge and even a clear canopy over the cockpit. Later, Arnold would provide the military with a written description of the events in a document that was originally classified, but that has long since been released. Arnold wrote,
"On June 24th, I had finished my work, and about 2 o'clock I took off for Chehalis, Washington Airport with the intention of going to Yakima, Washington. I flew directly toward Mount Rainier after reaching an altitude of about 9,500 feet, which is the approximate elevation of the high plateau from which Mount Rainier rises. There was a DC-4 to the left and to the rear of me, approximately 15 miles distance, and I should judge a 14,000-foot elevation. I hadn't flown more than 2 or 3 minutes on my course when a bright flash reflected on my airplane. It startled me as I thought I was too close to some other aircraft. I looked every place in the sky and couldn't find where the reflection had come from until I looked to the left and the north of Mount Rainier, where I observed a chain of 9 peculiar-looking aircraft flying from north to the south at approximately 9,500-foot elevation and going, seemingly, in a definite direction of about 170 degrees. The objects, were approaching Mount Rainier very rapidly, and I merely assumed they were jet planes. Anyhow, I discovered that this was where the reflection had come from, as 2 or 3 of them every few seconds would dip or change their course slightly, just enough for the sun to strike them at an angle that reflected brightly on my plane. I thought it was very peculiar that I couldn't their tails, but assumed they were some type of jet plane. I was determined to clock their speed, as I had 2 definite points I could clock them by. I watched these objects with great interest, as I had never before observed airplanes flying so close to the mountaintops. I would estimate their elevation could have varied 1,000 feet one way or another, up or down. They flew like many times I have observed geese to fly in a rather diagonal chain-like line, as if they were linked together. Their speed at the time did not impress me particularly, because I knew that our Army and Air Forces had planes that went very fast. A number of newsmen and experts suggested that I might have been seeing reflections, or even a mirage. This I know to be absolutely false, as I observed these objects not only through the glass of my airplane, but turned my airplane sideways where I could open my window and observe them with a completely unobstructed view. When these objects were flying approximately straight and level, There were just a black, thin line, and when they flipped was the only time I could get a judgment as to their size.
Arnold's sightings didn't gain front-page status immediately. Stories about it appeared in newspapers a day or two later, usually on page 8 or 9, and then with a comment about strange objects in fast flight. It was, at that time, the story of an oddity. Arnold claimed later that he thought he had seen some sort of new jet aircraft, and he was a little concerned about breaking the security around it. Throughout the 1970s till today, numerous alien abductions have been reported. Jim and Jack Weiner, Charles Foltz, and Charles Rack claim they were abducted by aliens during a camping trip near Allagash, Maine on August 20th of 1976. According to the four men, hypnotic regression enabled them to recall the experience of being taken aboard a UFO, then probed and tested by four-fingered beings with almond-shaped eyes and languid limbs.
Much like Roswell, the Valle de Elqui in Chile is also a hotspot for UFO activity. In 1998, residents of a nearby village witnessed a UFO hovering over a local hill. It shocked the entire population of 2,500. They saw a shiny metal object 15 meters across. It hovered, motionless, as the whole town came out to witness it. It remained there for 3 full days. Everybody from the town mayor to the police witnessed the event. The whole area was electrically blacked out, and all radio and TV broadcasts affected. Then it started to move upward slowly, but then suddenly turned and split in two and crashed. Local police were sent to the scene on horseback. They reported finding nothing, but still cordoned off the area. Over the next few hours and days, huge numbers of military vehicles and unmarked helicopters was seen in the area, and one man witnessed a large metallic object being lifted away by chopper. Most witnesses are convinced that whatever crashed in that remote hillside, it was big and the main segment carried away on a huge truck. The military have never given an explanation. However, here's what we do know. The military did not just investigate the local village and hill. They extended their search across a wide range and forced everyone away from the crash site for miles. All the local hotels reported a sudden surge in bookings from U.S. citizens claiming to be tourists. These were most certainly CIA and other security services. After the military operation, people who visited the hillside reported finding stones that were now the color of aluminum. There were several of the usual explanations given by the authorities. A weather balloon, atmospheric conditions. None of these make any sense given the sheer volume of witnesses, the hovering for 3 days, and the sudden breakup and crash. Huge numbers of military personnel and plain-clothed U.S. citizens would not have been drafted in for a weather balloon. Besides, such balloons require advance written permission to be launched, and there are no records of any request. What is very interesting is the fact that 4 months prior to this event, another object had crashed just over 10 miles away at Cerro Tololo. Witnesses stated there was a deafening noise, a bright flash, and many homes had their windows smashed. So bright was the flash that it appeared to be daytime and was witnessed over 150 miles away. Suddenly, storms appeared, and there was general panic among the population. One local taxi driver said that he was often chased by strange flying lights, but on that particular night, both he and his passengers were scared out of their wits. The lights he often saw came out of nowhere, from behind hills and round bends. He said they seemed to be acting intelligently, not some kind of natural swamp gas. Again, the military arrived, and witnesses reported seeing huge trucks carrying things away.
Cosmonaut Major General Vladimir Kovalniuk, when speaking about the Salyut 6th mission in 1981, said, "Many cosmonauts have seen phenomena which are far beyond the experiences of Earthmen. For 10 years I have never spoken on such things. At that time we were over the area of South Africa, moving towards the area of the Indian Ocean. I was just made some gymnastic exercises when I saw in front of me, through a porthole, an object which I could not explain. It is impossible to determine distances in space. A small object can appear large and far away, and the other way round. Sometimes a cloud of dust appears like a large object. Anyway, I saw this object, and then something happened I could not explain. Something impossible according to the laws of physics. The object had this shape, elliptical, and flew with us. From a frontal view, it looked like it would rotate in flight direction. It only flew straight, but then a kind of explosion happened. Very beautiful to watch, a golden light. This was the first part. Then 1 or 2 seconds later, a second explosion followed somewhere else, and 2 spheres appeared, golden and very beautiful. After this explosion, I saw white smoke, then a cloud-like sphere. Before we entered the darkness, we flew through this terminator, the twilight zone between day and night. We flew eastwards, and when we entered the darkness of the Earth's shadow, I could not see them any longer. The 2 spheres never returned." It appears that the Russians don't silence their cosmonauts half as much as the Americans. Here's another cosmonaut, Musa Manarov of the Mir mission in 1991. "It happened during a visit mission, when all our attention was focused on the slowly approaching space capsule. I was close to the great porthole, from where I could see our approaching visitors. I watched everything very carefully. When the capsule came closer, I filmed it with a professional Betacam camera. Suddenly, I noticed something below the spaceship, which first I looked like an antenna. Only when I looked closer and analysed the situation, I realised that there was no antenna at all. But first I thought it was part of the construction. But then this element started to move. It moved away from the ship. So I grabbed the radio and told them, 'Hey boys, you are losing something.' This of course alarmed them. With all my experience, especially with docking manoeuvres in space, I can tell you that especially in this phase, simply nothing can break off at all. If something would have been lost, it would have been torn off long before, during the launch, the manoeuvres, the turn, all these much more energetic flight phases. Now we were just gliding slowly towards each other without any pressure on the capsule. But then this something started to move downwards. When it flew away, it attracted all our attention. It looked like it was rotating. It was difficult to estimate its dimensions. If it was close or far away, I could not say. It was in free sight, and in space, it is difficult to estimate any size and distance. I can only say for sure that it was not very close, since I set the camera for infinity. If it would have been just a screw or something close to us, it would have been out of focus. The object was quite far away, in any case at least 300 feet, since this was the distance of the space capsule, and I had the impression that it was beyond it. It is possible that it was a kind of UFO. We can't say with any certainty what it was. It was definitely not a bigger piece of space junk, no rocket or part of so, since this would have been located. The space surveillance, ours, and the American, locate all bigger objects in space. They are followed. For every minute we know their position and their flight direction. If such an object would have come so close to the mirror, they would have located it and informed us. I don't think it was a piece of space junk or debris. There is a lot of that in the Earth orbit, satellite parts, rocket parts, just everything. But our space surveillance locates them, and according to them, there was nothing.
Joseph A. Walker was sent on direct missions to detect and photograph UFOs. At least, this is what Walker claimed himself. He was an American World War II pilot, experimental physicist, NASA test pilot, and astronaut, and was one of 12 pilots who flew the North American X-15, an experimental space plane jointly operated by the Air Force and NASA.
The X-15 is cut loose 7 miles over the Mojave Desert to fall free and glide back to Earth, testing the stability of the most radically different aerodynamic structure ever engineered.
In 1963, Walker made 3 flights above 50 miles, therefore qualifying as an astronaut according to the United States definition of the boundary of space. The latter 2, X-15 flights 90 and 91, also surpassed the Kármán line, the internationally accepted boundary of 100 kilometers. Making the latter flights immediately after the completion of the Mercury and Vostok programs, Walker became the first person to fly to space twice. He was the only X-15 pilot to fly above 100 kilometers during the program. He is credited with filming not less than 5 sightings during one of his missions. None of the films have ever been released to the public. Walker was killed on June 8, 1966, when his F-104N starfighter chase aircraft collided with a North American XB-70 Valkyrie. At an altitude of about 25,000 feet, Walker's starfighter was one of 5 aircraft in a tight formation for a General Electric publicity photo when his F-104 drifted into contact with the XB-70's right wingtip. The plane flipped over, passed over the top of the XB-70, striking both its vertical stabilizers and its left wing in the process, and exploded, killing Walker. The Valkyrie entered an uncontrollable spin and crashed into the ground north of Barstow, California, killing co-pilot Carl Cross. Its pilot, Alvin White, one of Walker's colleagues from the Man in Space Soonest program, ejected and was the sole survivor. The USAF summary report of the accident investigation stated that, given the position of the F-104, relative to the XB-70. The F-104 pilot would not have been able to see the XB-70's wing, except by uncomfortably looking back over his left shoulder. The report stated that it was likely that Walker, piloting the F-104, maintained his position by looking at the fuselage of the XB-70 forward of his position. The unlikeliness of a test pilot and astronaut with such a long career making a mistake like this was not considered by the accident investigators.
Proving alien abductions is difficult without obvious physical evidence. When an experiencer is returned, all he has to prove his encounter are the fragments of memories left intact by the aliens. Though throughout the history of UFO studies, countless cases have occurred that do indeed present physical evidence, many are not aware of this, or the facts of a case are simply ignored. Details in each case often are the proof an encounter happened, but even with specific details, we're left with the account and the sincerity of the witness. As early as the late 1800s, we have known about aliens, their craft, and perhaps even their purpose for coming to the Earth. Slowly over time, we have accumulated several craft, various technology, and even the bodies of occupants of UFOs, some apparently captured live and perhaps still living today. This may sound extraordinary, but there exists physical evidence of the truth to many of these claims. There exists today specially designed military units whose sole purpose is to arrive at a crash site early, contain the area, capture any living aliens, and gather up any dead aliens along with their technology. Then transport the craft and debris to secret installations far away from the prying eyes of American citizens. We may never know the full extent of this massive cover-up, much less be allowed to view this evidence. However, nothing can remain a secret forever. As more people come forward and expose the truth about UFO crashes and their containment, the day could come where someone blows the lid off these atrocities and the truth is revealed for all.
Mexico has not escaped the world of UFO activity. In fact, almost every day there is a report of something. But in 1977, something amazing happened. In July, the town of Puebla witnessed several large falling UFOs crashing in the distance. The army was called out. Rumors of a UFO crash and a cover-up spread. Nearby in Yopla, the townsfolk also saw the same thing, And this time they reported seeing a craft explode into thousands of sparkling pieces. Mayors, teachers, policemen, everybody saw it. As many witnesses rushed to recover the debris, they discovered that the Americans had already beaten them to it in an unmarked helicopter. Many believe them to have been members of the U.S. Air Force Moondust and Blue Fly recovery teams, specialist units set up to speedily recover UFO technology. Some fragments were recovered before the team of so-called NASA scientists could stop them. They were analyzed and found to be an alloy unknown to humanity at that time. It was then discovered that another crash had happened at Tabasco and that 2 dead aliens had been recovered.
Although it has been said there is a single case in the Blue Book files in which alien creatures were reported that wasn't labeled as some sort of psychological program, there are several good cases hidden in there. Skeptics, disbelievers, and debunkers like to say that there is no evidence that alien creatures have visited the planet. They ignore, reject, or are unaware that the Blue Book files do contain examples of physical evidence that has been recovered. The best of those cases came from Socorro, New Mexico on April 24, 1964. Lonnie Zamora, then a police officer in Socorro, saw a landed object and 2 small humanoids standing near it. According to Project Blue Book, Zamora was chasing a speeder when he heard a loud roar and saw a flash of light in the southwestern sky. Fearing that a dynamite shed on the edge of town might have exploded, Zamora broke off the chase and headed in that direction. Captain Hector Quintanilla added more detail to the story as it was told by Zamora during the official investigation. Quintanilla later wrote, "It was off the road to the left in the Arroyo, and at the first glance it looked like a car turned over, but when he drove closer it appeared to be aluminum clay, not chrome, and oval shaped like a football." Zamora drove about 50 feet along the hill crest, radioing back to the sheriff's office.
1044, I'll be 10-6, checking a breakdown in the Arroyo.
From this point, seated in the car, he could not see the object over the edge of the hill. As he stopped the car, he was still talking on the radio, and while he was getting out, he dropped his mic. He picked it up and put it back, and started down towards the object. As soon as I saw flame and heard roar, ran away from object but did turn head towards object. Object was in shape. It was smooth, no windows or doors. As roar started, I was still on the ground, running, bumped leg on car back fender area. Car facing southwest fell by can and glasses fell off. Kept running to north, with car between me and object. Rose to about level of car, about 20 to 25 feet. Took I guess about 6 seconds when object started to rise and glance back. It appeared about directly over the place where it rose from. I was still running. Then about 50 feet from car, I dug down, just over edge of hill. I stopped because I did not hear the roar. I was scared of the roar, and I had planned to continue running down the hill. I turned around toward the object and at the same time put my head toward ground, covering my face with my arms. When the roar stopped, heard a sharp tone whine, and the whine lasted maybe a second. Then there was complete silence about the object. That's when I lifted up my head and saw the object going away from me in a southwestern direction. It did not come any closer to me. It appeared to go in a straight line at the same height, possibly 10 to 15 feet from ground, and it cleared the dynamite shack by about 3 feet, shack about 8 feet high. Object was traveling west fast. It seemed to rise up and take off immediately across the country.
Quintanilla said, "I was determined to solve the case, and come hell or high water, I was going to find the vehicle or the stimulus." I decided that it was imperative for me to talk to the base commander at Holloman Air Force Base. I wanted to interview the base commander at length about special activities from his base. I needed help to pull this off, so I called Lieutenant Colonel Maston Jacks at SAFOI. I told him what I wanted to do, and he asks, "Do you think it will do any good?" I replied, "God damn it, Maston, if there is an answer to this case, it has to be in some hangar at Holloman." He went to work with his position at the Pentagon, and the approval for his visit came through. Colonel Gehrman was the base commander during his visit. He was most cooperative and told me that I could go anywhere and visit any activity which interested me. I went from one end of the base to the other. I spent 4 days talking to everybody I could and spent almost a whole day with the downrange controllers at the White Sands Missile Range. I left Holloman dejected and convinced that the answer to Zamora's experience did not originate and terminate at this base. On my way back to Wright-Patterson, I hit upon an idea. Why not a lunar landing vehicle? I knew that some research had been done at Wright-Patterson, so as soon as I got back, I asked for some briefings. The briefings were extremely informative, but the lunar landers were not operational in April of 1964. I got the names of the companies that were doing research in this field, and I started writing letters. The companies were most cooperative, but their answers were all negative. I labeled the case unidentified, and the UFO buffs and hobby clubs had themselves a field day. According to them, there was proof that our beloved planet had been visited by an extraterrestrial vehicle. Although I labeled the case unidentified, I've never been satisfied with that classification.
The room was lit up completely, but my eyes were closed. I knew somehow not to open my eyes. There was something telling me, don't open your eyes because you won't like what you're going to see. Eventually, I did open my eyes because I could hear noise in the room. There was like scuffling on the floor. I opened my eyes. There were 3 small grey beings with big black eyes, big heads, and very skinny, spindly limbs. They pulled me up out of the bed, and then with one behind me and one each side of me holding my elbows, walked me towards the window. And I'm thinking, well, the windows are closed, guys, so you better open them before we go any further. So there was this rationality and irrationality going on at the same time. And as we approached the window, I closed my eyes. And as I did, I felt this stickiness. It was a stickiness and a feeling of something being pulled very slowly across my face. It wasn't painful, it was just very, very weird. I opened my eyes because I felt cold, I felt wind on my face, and I was aware that I was now floating outside of the window, 3 stories up, looking down at the car park with a very bright light above my head. I couldn't really see what was above my head, I was just aware of this very bright light. 1 little grey on each elbow, I was aware of them, and we floated up into the craft.
So far into the future, technology is so advanced, infinitely ahead of what we can imagine, that they don't even look human now, but they are. We haven't been able to like fully test and see if they are, but they are what I believe people, and they have found relics, at least in their time, of what they used to be, which is us. And the farther and farther they've gone, they've found a way to come back, and they are just studying what they used to be, the ancient structures, the ancient people, the ancient biology, which would be the reason why they look at animals, they look at people, they look at the plants, they look at the structures and everything, because they're coming back to see what they used to be. And we have no way of knowing how far or when, or even if it is the same people in a different planet, but I'm firmly believing it's us.
The same year that Iran was chasing mysterious lights across the sky, the Canary Islands were having their own strange encounter. At 9:27 p.m. on June 22nd, Navy personnel reportedly noticed a strange light traveling along the horizon that later split into two distinct objects. However, even this weird little tale has nothing compared to the reports on the ground. The residents of one street in La Rosa, Gran Canaria, reported seeing a gigantic translucent blue sphere hovering just above the ground. Roughly 30 meters in diameter, the sphere supposedly contained two humanoid creatures, vague shadows that could be seen against the stars. According to one witness, things then got even crazier, with the sphere expanding to enormous dimensions before vanishing off into the night sky. In the intervening years, several explanations have been put forward, ranging from meteor effects to a missile test. Yet to this day, people continue to swear they saw this strange orb and the even stranger creatures inside it.
In March of 1971, the USS Trepang, a submarine under the command of Rear Admiral Dean Reynolds Sackett, was on its journey between Iceland and Norway's Jan Mayen Island in the Atlantic Ocean. While testing its weapons under the ice caps, the submarine came upon an unidentified flying object by accident. Alarmed by what they were seeing, photographs of not one, but several crafts were taken. These photographs have remained top secret, but were leaked to a French paranormal magazine by an anonymous source. Experts who have analyzed the photos have declared them credible.
Phil Snyder, a former government geologist and engineer with over 17 years of experience in black projects, is one of the most important whistleblowers in modern history. He is a geologist, structural engineer, and metallurgist that's worked on building deep underground military bases. He spent more than 17 years with U.S. government black projects, carrying a level 3 security clearance at secret bases such as Area 51, S4, and Los Alamos. Snyder claimed there are 131 active underground bases in the United States, with approximately 1,477 worldwide. He says magneto-levitron trains connect all the bases within the continental U.S. in a vast subterranean transport system. According to Snyder, the U.S. government signed an agreement in 1954 with extraterrestrials, granting them the right to experiment on humans and cattle in exchange for technology. This agreement was known as the Grenada Treaty, and it is a well-documented event. The original terms for this treaty were that only a small number of humans would be abducted. They had to be returned to their original locations, and their memories had to be wiped. The aliens were supposed to submit a list of the individuals they were taking to Majestic 12, a government overseeing committee. However, After a few years of this, it became clear that the aliens were taking far more humans than they had originally bargained for, which spawned the origins of the alien-human conflict that persists to this day. He describes the alien agenda as the complete takeover of this planet, the killing off of a portion of the world's population by 2029. An alien takeover would mean the implementation of a one-world government, which is the direct opposite of constitutional law, and would be the end of freedom as we know it. Snyder claims some of the alien races here on Earth actually eat people and use the glandular secretions of animals and humans for mixtures of the vitamins for their food and can actually get high from our adrenaline. According to Snyder, there are more than 100,000 missing children totally unaccountable for from FBI archives in the U.S. alone. He believes that many of them are held captive underground and summarily done away with. In some cases, they are literally eaten. Snyder claims that there are 11 distinct races of aliens here on Earth, with only 2 of them being benevolent. He claims to be one of only 3 survivors of an alien-human war at the Dulles, New Mexico and Los Alamos underground bases, where 66 government agents and workers lost their lives in August of 1979. Snyder claims that all information dealing with aliens is kept well hidden from the public, and that the U.S. military has known about the alien presence for more than 85 years, going back as early as 1909. He asserts that more than $500 billion was being allocated annually to black projects dealing with these matters in 1995. According to Snyder, 28% of the U.S. gross national product was being spent exclusively on building underground bases. This black budget sidesteps Congress completely and is a treasonous violation of constitutional law and taxpayer money. Without a doubt, these budgets and projects continue today on a massive scale. Snyder gave a talk in 1995 where he made explosive claims about government cover-ups, black budget projects, UFOs, and government military collaboration with aliens in deep underground bases. Less than 6 months after giving his talk, he was found dead in his apartment with piano wire still wrapped around his neck in what appears to be a military-style execution. According to some sources, he had been brutally tortured repeatedly before being killed. The authorities dismissed the death as a suicide. If any part of Phil Snyder's story is true, then the invasion has already begun. Aliens now live among us on planet Earth, carefully sequestered away in secret bases underground, and control us with agreements from our own government. Have we been sold out by our own government? Does a treaty exist between alien greys and humans? Are we giving away our rights to an alien presence?